Inventory. No one has an issue with this, so we'll just move on. Number 6, inventory. Production always appears to be busy based on staff utilization. Mandatory overtime. Overhead costs per unit are high. Now this gets into how do you identify this. Overhead costs per unit are high. And sales volume per full-time equivalent is low. Your people are busy, but what does it mean? Right? Busy's great. Like, it's wonderful. But key performance indicators, you need to look at that. And also understand how it compares to what your expectation is, but also how does it compare to other people within your industry, your playing field, your competition. If you need help with that, call Sasan or I. We have a lot of information about privately held companies and financial scorecards. But look at your overhead costs per unit and sales volume per employee. And that's where inventory. We have plenty of inventory. What about inventory turnover? Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Right? What about inventory days? We're good. No, you're not good. Your inventory days are 90 days and your competition is 30. So what do we want to do? Do we want to do something or we don't? Do you want to talk about the rocks or do you want to talk about the elephant? Okay? Examples of things that as we've gone through the process, your product range, the number of stock keeping units or SKUs. I had a client, I forget what, it was ridiculous. And they were in furniture distribution. So you would think like the number of SKUs maybe 1,000. Well, it was like 32,000, right? And they continued to grow their top line. It was great. But guess what? Their bottom line stayed the same. That's not, you're working harder to, I don't know, just something doesn't make sense, right? You're working harder to make the same. They had 32,000 SKUs. They've now reduced it to 17,000. And guess what? They're making a lot more money because they got rid of the little lamp posts that are solar. Well, I mean, it sounds nice, but guess what? Somebody's not going to pay $1,000 for a lamp post. Maybe some people would. The guy with the yacht probably would. But most people wouldn't. The product portfolio profitability analysis. Most companies, you like to look at the top line. Sales grew, that's great. But what about by unit? By type of unit. And it doesn't have to be that you have 17,000 SKUs, so therefore you're going to have 17,000 product portfolio analysis. No. By functional unit. I have a client, they have tobacco products, they have convenience, things in the convenience stores like the snacks and things like that. And then they also had another product which he had no business being in. But after we went through and said, where do you make your money? Where do you spend your time? Tobacco. He says, well, you know what, Rob? I love a Great Depression. That's what he says, because more people smoke and use tobacco. I'm like, that's terrible. I can't believe you're saying that, right? But that's where he made his money. And guess what? The other thing that I can't even remember what it is, that's where he spent about 45% of his time. So after going through this process, he doesn't, the reason I can't remember is because he doesn't do it anymore. Think about your business. Where do you make your money? And how much time do you spend doing it? How, but where? Are you in the right region? Right? Look at demographics. We make all of our money in Philadelphia, but we spend all of our time in the suburbs. I don't blame you, right? I'm not a city kind of guy, right? But understand what you're doing, your product, what makes you money, and are you focusing on that? How about supplies? Stationary, kitchen, and medical, how much of that kind of stuff do you keep? Thank goodness we had the paper towels when my belief structure had to change in that kitchen. But guess what? We have like, I don't know how many big cartons of paper towels. Is it waste? Well, you know what, maybe it's not significant, but think about it. How many times do we have these seminars when we buy 3 trays of muffins? And how many times do we have 2.5 trays left? Right? That's inventory. Lead times and turnover. I said about the client that their staff is always busy, and they love saying about how busy people are and great, but you talk about inventory turnover or lead times. It's amazing for as much inventory as people maintain, how they're not, and some companies are right on point with it, laser focused. But the lead times, a lot of times companies that have a lot of inventory have the slowest lead times because they're not stocking the right things. Greg had mentioned that they have 7 units just because, right? Well, your lead times are great, but do we need the 7 units? Think about the analytical KPIs of lead times and turnovers that relate to inventory.